is
Gaining Altitude.
Conversations worth navigating.
Welcome to the 5th episode of Gaining Altitude, Conversations Worth Navigating. At Delta, we take immense pride in what we do. We safely transport millions of passengers and cargo across the globe and connect people like you to life's most important moments. It's our passion, and quite frankly, it's what we're great at. We have the J.D. Power Award and countless other accolades to prove it. But while we're passionate about physically connecting people, our purpose as an organization is much deeper than that. As a colleague of mine brilliantly put, we connect the world to its potential. We play a role in creating a world that we believe in, a world that's more sustainable, equitable, efficient, interconnected, a world that's more understanding and rooted in community. That's our purpose. And all 75,000 of us at Delta proudly serve each day at the intersection of our passion and purpose. So in this episode, we'll explore that very concept. And today we're incredibly excited to be joined by Larry Fitzgerald, who spent 17 seasons as a wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals of the NFL. While his passion is powerfully shown on the football field, and I mean, Larry has some insane stats under his belt. Off the field, he's a philanthropist, an investor, a business owner, and a proud father. He embodies what it means to be a true team player, always looking for ways to make others win. So we'll explore it all, and as always, you, our viewers, are important teammates for today's discussion. So help us make the play by sharing any comments or questions you have for Ed or Larry in the comment section on whatever platform you're using to view this live stream. And with that said, I'll toss it over to the quarterback for today's conversation, Delta CEO, Ed Bastian.
Well, thanks, Jamar. I'm not sure I'm Kyler Murphy quite yet, but Larry, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Great to have you on Gaining Altitude, and we're going to have a fun conversation. And thank you all for the people that are out there that are joining us in this conversation. Jamar said it well. Larry's got amazing statistics and honors from his football playing days. But the thing we love about Larry, far more than that, is that you're a great person. You're a philanthropist. You're an investor, you're a businessman, you've got a wide range of interests that you've cultivated over time. And starting this year, you've become an advisor to me and our team here at Delta. So welcome to the Delta family.
Thank you
as
so
part
much.
of that, Larry.
Pleasure.
Larry in 2016 was named Walter Payton Man of the Year for his humanitarian efforts, which in the football world that's a huge honor. I don't know, that may be one of the best honors you've probably ever received?
It's hands down the best honor. And going through the process, I was nominated one time prior to actually winning it. And going through the process, getting to know Connie, his wife, and Jared and Brittany, his son and daughter, and you really get to see what Walter Payton embodied, what he stood for, what his ethos was all about. And it has made it so, it just touched me so deeply to be able to be associated with some of the great men who have won it prior to me, and seeing the great tradition that is presented after. I have teammates like Calais Campbell and Anquan Boldin and Kurt Warner, men that I just so respect. It's truly the greatest accomplishment that I've ever achieved, and I'm just honored.
I'm not sure if there's many people that were, because I also know you were in the top 100. The NFL 100, as they celebrated a couple years ago, the 100 top players of all time to recognize the 100th anniversary of the NFL. Yeah. I'm sure you're in a very small company. You might be the only person. I'm sure Walter was in there.
Walter was in there. There was a few others, but
that's to be a great person and a great player. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean I've been very fortunate, and I can trace it all back to my parents. They made a lot of sacrifices, my brother and I, to, try to be a great example and teach us some great traits, and always remain humble and be caring to others. It's just pretty simple philosophies, but when applied well, I think it bodes well.
One of the things we want to talk about is your foundation, and I know this morning you were over at South Atlanta High School. Speaking to the kids. I understand their team just made the playoffs, and you were giving them some inspiration, but more importantly, you were giving them some tools. Tell me about what you did and how that experience went.
Well, first, it's an honor to be able to go and talk to young people that are playing high school sports. And I think for me, like, the high school experience is the most authentic. It's not about the money or anything else. It's about playing for school pride and playing with people you really, really love and enjoy being around your high school classmates. And to be able to sit there and talk to those young those young men about not only just the importance of sport and how I want to see them do well going into the playoffs, but just what it means to be great citizens and working hard in the classroom and being community servants and all of the things that are very, very important. When you're 16, 17, 18, you're really building for the future. And so to be able to go over there and talk to them was great. They're 10-1 right now. They're playing against, I think, West Side High School on Friday, and I think they're gonna have a chance to win the state championship. I'm pulling for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me more importantly, though, what you did for the investment in the kids' lives and the technology investment that you made.
So something with my foundation we've always tried to do is try to bring technology into schools. It's the one thing that when I go to affluent schools and you go to schools who are predominantly in underserved communities, there's a big technology discrepancy, and I wanted to bring that to the school and allow the kids to be able to have all the access they want, and so they can research, they can take it to the art class to do drawing, they can take it to the computer class if they want to hook it up to read the music and play the electric guitar or whatever their dreams or hopes are is very mobile, and I really like that it could be moved around. And last year during the pandemic, when a lot of kids were not able to go to school, some of the tablets were able to be taken home. We would give them Wi-Fi connection so they can still be able to participate when they were at home, and so it was great. And I love the versatility of it, and hopefully we can work together on serving some more schools here in the local area.
We're going to do that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Tell me about COVID. How was COVID for you?
It was difficult. Obviously it was a big change for our nation, the entire world, and fortunately, my family, for the most part, was able to stay pretty healthy. You were able to spend, a lot of time together. Really being able to kind of dive into the things that are most important to you. And I think all of us can attest that our families are something that are very important to us, and be able to spend that time with the kids and, going over second grade math and seventh grade Spanish and all the things that I'm really, really not good at. I was stretched, and but it was fun. I just remember vividly just playing chess with the kids and having Uno games, and my middle son Apollo always cheating. We set the rules, and he always tried to deviate from the rules, and so I just thought some of the memories are really fun. Some of the things I'll never forget. Now, since we are somewhat out of it, the kids are all flying around all over the place now at play dates and sleepovers and football, basketball practices, and so there's certain aspects of it that I kind of miss.
Yeah.
Just the camaraderie and the closeness that you were able to have with them.
I can relate to that. I spent a lot of time with my kids, and
Yeah.
it was unique. They didn't have anywhere they could go,
True.
so they had to spend time with Dad. It
Yeah.
was kind of fun.
Yeah.
As a football player, how was it though?
It was strange. It was the first time in my life ever walking into a venue and that was built for 70,000 people and nobody was there. I mean, you could literally hear your coach telling you what to do or what the play was or what they thought the play was on the sideline, and it was like being at practice almost. But I give the NFL a lot of credit for being able to make sure no games were canceled and be able to really do a good job of protecting the players and staff while our country was going through a very difficult time. And talking to fans after the fact, they really were appreciative. Just to be able to have something to do, something they can watch, something they can enjoy, and have their fantasy football team still, and do all of those things that they really love to do. So, just from hearing from people, they were elated that we were able to go through with the season, and it was a great time.
The thing I loved about it also was the fact that the players understood the importance of the fans.
Oh yeah.
It's not just the game, it's all of us.
Yeah.
And without the fans, it's not the same.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. And, just the excitement and the passion that the fans have for sports is unmatched. And, they couldn't be there with us physically, but they were watching us on TV and they were there with us in spirit. And, we could feel their energy every time you go out around town to pick up the kids or whatever, you would see the flags flying and just how proud they were of the team, even though they couldn't be there physically and support you.
So this is probably the first year in 30 years that you haven't played football.
Yeah.
How are you handling that?
It's been a bit of an adjustment. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. The way you've kept score is different now. You could always look at the scoreboard and see, am I winning? Have I won? Am I losing? Have I lost? And everything you did was kind of just geared towards that. And now, you trying to figure out is just being a great father, is that the win, right? Or being a savvy investor, is that the win? Or being a competent board member, is that the win? And so just trying to navigate that and figure out what is most important to you. It takes some time.
Yeah. So speaking of investor, I know you're invested in a lot of companies, and you're figuring out some of the strategies that you want to deploy. But one that people may not know is that you're a partial owner of the Phoenix Suns, the basketball team.
Yeah.
How's that been?
It's been amazing. It's been an unbelievable learning experience. Being on the player side, you don't get to understand much of the business aspects of sports, right? And so now being able to kind of, so to speak, look under the hood and see exactly how it works, why decisions are made, the direction of the organization from a managerial position and leadership. It's been a really, really great learning experience for me. It's been fun. Both of our teams, the Suns and the Mercury, went to the finals last year.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, in both cases we fell short, but to be able to have those deep playoff runs and to see the city of Phoenix is really, get behind, the organizations, and it was fantastic. And the Cardinals are off to a great start this year. So, both the teams in the city are playing great right now, and it's a lot of excitement in the Valley.
Yeah, well, we know that here in Atlanta with the Braves,
Yeah.
just taking home the world title, which is it lifted the whole mood of the community, and that's what sports do.
Yeah, it does. It's a great unifier. People don't worry about what religion you are, what race you are, or what your sexual orientation is. It's just we're here to support the team.
We're together.
And we're all together in this, and I love that. It's a great unifier.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, tell me the story you've told me a while ago about Frank Bisagno, who got you started into business early in your career. I think it's a great story. It's a great learning for people to kind of see a glimpse of you and why you're having some of the success you're having after the game now is over.
Yeah. So I was in New York. It was in 2008, and I was there to watch the Suns ironically play against the Knicks in Madison Square Garden. And a gentleman came up to me. I never met him before, and he came up to me, introduced himself. He said, "Hi, I'm Frank Bisignano." He was working at J.P. Morgan at the time, and he said, "I've been following your career, and I would love to get to know you a little bit better." And from time to time, you're out. People tell you that, but there was something that was very sincere about him in the meeting, and just how deliberate he was in our interaction. And so we exchanged emails, we stayed in touch, and he asked me to come back to New York, and would I be interested in an internship. And so I took him up on it, and I learned from top to bottom, of the banking industry, and it really spearheaded just my interest in, just broadening my horizon and working on my range. And I'm very thankful for Frank because he didn't have to do that. He didn't know me from Adam, and for him to take a chance on me, it meant a lot to me. And he's still one of my closest friends and advisors. Unfortunately, now he's the CEO of Fiserv, and they sponsor the Milwaukee Bucks arena. And to be with him in a different capacity last year was fun. He was happy that the Bucks won, and I was sad that the Bucks won, but I was happy for a friend, and he's been a wonderful friend.
Yeah, but you've leveraged that, right? Because you've done that with some other companies.
Yeah, so I've done, so every year after that I would do internships at different organizations, and it would be from real estate to venture to private equity, mezzanine funding, you name it. I was just trying to get exposure in as many different fields as I possibly could to kind of see what interests me. What do you think I could do, after I was done playing? And the thing that I really loved about it is you got the chance to meet just people in all different walks of life, different industries, and it really just helped your network and people you could talk to and bounce ideas off of and get really good sound advice. And if I don't do anything after, I've made a lot of really, really good friends, which has been amazing.
Well, one of the things it's prepared you for, and people again probably don't know this about Larry, is on the board of his first big publicly traded company, Dick's Sporting Goods.
Yeah.
And you're board member for the last year or so. And
Yeah.
I know it was a learning for you, but at the same time, it's incredible to be inside corporate America and see how a great, successful organization operates.
It is. I mean, and under wonderful leadership in Ed Stack and Lauren Herbert, they together have created an amazing culture, and one that I've benefited from greatly, just from learning from other board members and being able to be around their senior executives, just unbelievable insight, wonderful people, and just great vision for the future. And to be able to sit in that room is truly a blessing. And there's no wonder why the company is done the way it's done, just with the people that they have surrounded themselves with. And it's been a wonderful experience.
So can I make you human for a bit? I mean, you're a put together person.
Yeah.
You're a humble person. Tell me about your first experience going into the boardroom.
It was very difficult. So I was still playing last year, and our first board meeting that I attended was in September, and it was during the pandemic. So everything was virtual, and the part that was most difficult, because I hadn't started my NACDC classes yet, started getting a little bit of coursework in board study, and being virtual, you're hearing the meetings and you can't actually really participate and ask questions, right? And so it was tough to be able to do that. And now I find myself so much better, being able to understand the material and being able to sit down and talk to other board members about, things that they said. Hey, Manny, what did you said this in the meeting? Can you explain that a little bit more in depth and why you were thinking that way, or Mark, please explain that. You said that we should be thinking this way. Where did that come from, and why did you think that way? When you're on virtual, you just don't have the opportunity to ask those questions, and you kind of just gotta just put it in your head and wait until you can email them after the meeting. Right. But it doesn't help you at that point. So
virtual is one part of it.
Yes.
But just going into the board environment, put virtual aside. I mean, because what I loved that you shared with me earlier was that you felt like you were intimidated, maybe for the first time in your life, and at a real deep level.
Yeah, it was definitely intimidating, because you're in a situation for the first time where you're not the best, right? And you're very young in your life, and these people have been in these positions and running companies that have to do with retail for 30, 40 years, and their understanding of subject matter is, they're experts at it, and you're just now getting into it. But what I learned is, if you put the work in, you study it, you read the material, you actually are diligent in your preparation, you can really expedite the learning curve. And I feel so much more comfortable now in the setting, and I'm going to continue to improve, because it's something I'm passionate about, and I just really, really love and enjoy being around the people that I'm in there.
I think it's just a great learning for everyone.
For sure.
No matter how successful you are, how many times you've been on the world stage, there's still things to go learn. Yeah. It's still humble.
Oh, for sure.
To be intimidated and to take, but you learn about yourself from a whole different vantage point, and
that's true.
It's going to continue to move your career along further.
Yeah, and it's made me a lot more open to taking chances on myself, by taking this one position, and so hopefully it just continue to help me, continue to have that mindset.
Yeah. Well, one other thing we share in common is the passion for breast cancer research and the sensitivity and the awareness. And I know you lost your mom to the disease, and so many of us have been impacted by the disease. And at Delta, our people do an amazing job putting their arms around our colleagues who have it, our family members who have it, and what we can do to find a cure. I know you're involved with that as well.
Well, something that I've always been very passionate about, and even before my mother passed away, my mother worked in the breast cancer field, ironically, for nonprofit organizations, and just seeing so many women who were battling and struggling with it, and my mom always was there and attentive and just so open to being there as a resource, and then to be able to contract it, years back was devastating to our family. But we had unbelievable support and resources that we could lean on. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough to be able to save her life, but what she did leave was a lasting legacy of a fighting spirit. And we started a foundation in her honor, the Carol Fitzgerald Memorial Fund, that all the proceeds go back to causes and organizations that are directly involved in it. And it's been a wonderful time to really just embrace the cause. And I know back in the day when we were playing, the NFL would do a Crucial Catch campaign, and to be able to see all the women who had beat breast cancer and all the women who were battling breast cancer holding the flag during the national anthem always get me so emotional, just to see the women so courageously battling. And it makes me very happy every October, when I see those purple banners and ribbons and pins, and the kids, even in my son's football games, wearing pink socks, and I mean, it just makes me very happy to know that people care.
Yeah, it's awesome. That's awesome. So you grew up in Minneapolis, and we've got a big base of people in Minneapolis. You should probably say hello to them, and tell me about your upbringing in Minneapolis. And
so I had a wonderful time, growing up in Minneapolis. It's a blue-collar city, and my dad, he's been a sports journalist now for 43 years up there, and so, growing up with my dad, we used to do some really, really cool things, take us down to Minnesota Twins games and get to go hang out at the ballpark and shag balls with Kirby Puckett and Dan Glavine and Chili Davis and Chuck Knobloch and Ken Herbeck. You just go on down the list of all these wonderful players you get the chance to be around. And on the football side, my dad helped us become a ball boy, my brother and I, for the Minnesota Vikings, and hanging out with those guys. And it was an unbelievable time in my life. And even at that 12, 13, 14 years old, I didn't know I was going to be a player in the National Football League when my aspirations were that. And to be able to see those great players and the way they prepared, the way they studied, the way they just went about their business. Most fans only get a chance to see greatness when they are displayed on TV, right? But to be able to see behind the scenes what makes them great was really unique. And at 13 and 14, when you see Chris Carter staying 30 minutes after practice running routes when he's already the best player in the National Football League at his position, it just shows you something different. If you want to be great at what you do, you have to be intrinsically motivated and willing to do the extra when everybody else is not willing to do. And so, those experiences, and then my mom on the non-for-profit side, just being around and seeing just how compassionate she was, and her willingness to be available was always something that struck me. It's not like we had a lot of money to give to charity, but she would always give her time. And time is one of those things that you have to value, because none of us know how much we have it. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO of Delta, or you're an NFL player, or you're in the camera crew. We all have 24 hours a day.
At the same time.
That's it. And what you choose to do and use it with is unique to you. And she always was a great example of showing that, how valuable giving to others was to her, and it became a passion of my brother and my father as well.
Yeah, and you still maintain a home up in the Twin Cities.
Only when it's nice, though. I don't like that cold weather. I was up there last week, and it was in the evenings. It was in the 20s and in the high 30s. I said, I got to get out of here. That's not my speed anymore. Yeah, I always say I served my time.
Well, I'm going to turn it over in a second to Jamar and to Anthony for some questions, and I'm sure there's a bunch coming in online. I want to learn a little bit about Larry the dad. What can you share about? You mentioned during the pandemic you had a little more time with your boys.
Yeah.
And I struggle with myself with my kids. We've been fortunate, we've been blessed, we've been successful. Sometimes hard to grow up as a kid with that success and that set of expectations. Yeah. And how do you deal with that?
Well, I have 3 sons. Devin's 13, Apollo's 8, and Milo's 5. And I think the toughest part for me was my oldest son loves football and just plays receiver, does all the things that I did when I was his age. It's not. I can't look at him and his progress through my lenses, right? And that's not fair. It's not fair to him. And I just tell him, he comes to me like last week. They lost their playoff game to a really good team, and he dropped the ball. Unfortunately, he came to me. I was standing over there close during halftime. He said, Dad, what happened? I said, son, it's not the time right now. All you can do is just play the next play, and later on we'll talk about it, right? And so, it's important to be able to have those great lessons. And my dad was hard on me when I was young. He was like on me, and sometimes it wasn't always fun, to be answering those questions. And so with my son, I try to kind of take a step back a little bit and just let him experience it the way he wants to experience. And if I want to coach him, I'll go around the way. I'll go to his coach and say, Coach, he needs to work on this. His routes he needs to come out of it a little quicker. He needs to drop his weight when he's running those curl patterns, and get his hands up a little bit higher when he's attacking the football and tucking the football. And I don't tell him myself, I tell his coach, and then his coach will tell him, and he said, Dad, Coach told me this at practice. I said, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. I think you should probably apply those things coaches talk to you about. So I try not to be too hard on him, and just let him enjoy the experience. That's what it's all about. Apollo, he's more of a techie young man. He's on his games. He loves to play, Roblox and all these video games, and then very savvy. And so he plays sports, but I don't know how much he loves it, you know. But he does it because his brothers do it, and he saw me do it. But you know, like I said, I have zero expectations for him. And my 5-year-old got him swinging the clubs a little bit. He likes to play golf.
That's good.
And so we go to Top Golf and we'll go hit balls, and you know, it's great to be able to hang with them and see how different their personalities and their interests are, and try to find ways to be able to, you know, just help them grow and find ways to, you know, just help them do the things that they want to do and experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Jamar, I'll turn it to you and let you continue the conversation.
Sounds good. Lots of engagement externally and internally with Delta folks. Lots of fans of yours. So we'll kick it off with some little Q&A, rapid fire questions for the both of you. And the first would be, if you had to live in another country, which country would it be and why? We'll start with Larry and then go to Ed.
I'll go to Australia. I speak English. It's a great sports culture, great outdoors, and just the people are unbelievably friendly.
I'm going to cop out. I'm going to say anywhere in Europe. I love Europe, and I would have a hard time choosing between which country. The cultures, the variety of experience that you get, the fact that you have so much history there, and as an American, you can relate to, you know, where we came from.
That's great. What are you passionate about? What are you most passionate about, Larry, and why?
Most passionate about like just learning. You know, I really have a passion for learning and you know, finding out about new cultures and trying new cuisines. I'm just really intellectually curious in that way.
You know, again, I've got a lot of passions. I'd say, like you, my kids, my family is very, very passionate about. But I'm also passionate about the purpose that you serve in this planet, and whether that's here at work, what we do to provide better service to our customers, to our communities, to our employees, or, you know, longer term. You ask yourself, we've all been through a very vulnerable period these last couple of years, and you say, what's the role to play and beyond that? And I'm spending a lot of time thinking as I, you know, look even longer in my career, Delta, and beyond the career, just like you, what do I want to do with it?
Sure.
All right, and last one. You both are both really big role models to so many people in the world. Who would you say is your biggest role model?
So my parents were for sure my biggest role model. It's great to be able to have somebody you could touch and talk to, and you know, really get expert advice on.
Yeah.
And you know, Dad worked multiple jobs. My mom was always giving of others, and you know, I just really love their connection, the way they loved each other, the way they fought for each other, the way they supported one another. And they always told us they would do anything they could to help us, you know, reach our goals. And they saw I was passionate about one thing, and some of my brothers were passionate about something, and they did everything they could, every single resource and advice and opportunity they could provide for us. They did it, and you know, my parents were amazing.
Yeah, my mom is my role model, and fortunately lost her like you lost your mom. And I come from a big family, 9 kids. And we lost our dad early in life, and her ability to continue to go and build that family and that influence over time, and she always had time individually for each of us, and the confidence and the motivation I draw a lot from is just that inner sense of knowing that, and she taught me, you know, whatever I put my mind to, she really believed I could do it.
Absolutely.
And she convinced me, just like I'm sure your dad and your mom convinced you, and the influence of parents in one's life. And as a parent now, I mean, you realize the responsibility we carry to kind of speak the truth, and in a good way, you know, to our kids, so that they can continue to be inspired, and they'll carry those words for the rest of their life.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Larry, first of all, get a shout out from Phoenix. We have a couple of employees out there that know you're in the house today, so you got some fans who are shouting out to you on my page.
Hello.
So hello there. My question for you, you've done several years in sports, so you've had amazing careers, high school, college, pro. What are or have been the greatest lesson, one lesson, that you've been able to carry over into your professional world?
I would say just being diligent in terms of your work ethic. No matter what profession you choose, to be sports, business, parenting, I mean, you have to put the time in. You have to be diligent in your preparation. And that's something that my parents taught me at a very young age, that, you know, that if you want something, that there was a requirement that you had to go out there and earn it. And that's something that I've always, you know, really thought and put in the forefront of my mind as I prepare for anything. And the same thing I talk to my sons about. It's you know, yeah, you say you want to do well on this Spanish test. Well, have you studied like you should have? Have you put the time in? Have you talked to your teacher about questions that you may have about it? You know, and so you have to put that time in. Yeah.
And I think taking that one step further, football, great, but when you take it over to the new world, your new world of business, what is that thing that you've learned that you've had to do? Because again, you're going into unfamiliar territory. What is the new thing from professional football world that you've had to carry that's helped you in the business world as well?
So you have to be an active listener, right? You know, in sports, you know, you often get a chance to run the route, run the reps, you know, do it, and it's physical, right? And in business, like, the reps are not so much physical; they're much more mental. It's the reading material, it's doing seminars, going online and taking executive business courses, things of that nature. And so, you know, so what used to work for me in terms of like physically going out and attacking it's a little bit different. And so
reading people.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
And relating to people.
You have to.
And meeting people where they're at, right? Which is totally different. I mean, those are skills that you're very good at, I'll share. But, you know, those are things that will lead to your success.
Yes, sir.
No question.
Before we get to the next question, I do want to read a comment that came in from delta.com/gainingaltitude from Donnie Edwards. And he says, Larry, one of the best to ever play the game on and off the field. You are definitely an inspiration to all of us former NFL players. From Donnie Edwards from the NFL, linebacker that chased you around the field for many years. Proud of you. It's beautiful.
Tell Donnie, tell him I really appreciate his guidance and leadership. I still remember back, you know, when I got a chance to meet him and Tony Gonzalez and Drew Brees and Sandy Sandoval, some of the guys I really admired. You know, he was a great man to me when I was young, and you know, I just really, that means a lot to me coming from him.
Yeah, Donnie was here a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
Over at our tech ops space. And,
Okay.
you know, he's got a passion and heart for veterans.
Oh, okay.
And as we were celebrating our veterans and the active members of our family here that are serving in reserves or served our country, Donnie came and spoke to them, and we're working with Donnie on some ideas for the future. He's a great dude.
He is.
A great dude.
Yeah.
It's powerful. We have a question coming in from a Delta employee as well. It says, Larry, many people struggle with work-life balance, especially in this busy world today. How do you navigate and achieve balance between your various endeavors and your family life? What advice do you have for those of us who struggle in this area?
Well, I mean, that's a struggle that I think a lot of people have right now, and I kind of take it, you know, in phases. Of whatever my kids are most important to them, that goes first, right? You know, okay, they got practice on Tuesday, Thursday, games at Fridays and Saturdays. Like, these times are blocked off first and foremost, and then I kind of work around that. I like to do a lot of my Zooms and meetings before they wake up in the morning, so I get up around 5:30, 6 o'clock. You know, I get a lot of the work done before I take them to school and doing all the parent duties. You know, I always want to make sure that I'm available for them emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually and physically, because they need that. The best time with my family is in the car ride, taking them to school. You know, you get like 25 minutes there and 25 minutes back. Give me the phones. Talk to me about your day. Like, you know, what was it like? What did you struggle with?
I miss that with my kids. Yeah, I miss that.
And then like there's fun things too, like so on Wednesdays or a lighter day, I take them to school and I can sneak off to the golf course or go read a book that I've been really wanting to work on. And so I mean it's really great to have a little bit of balance, and it's important to be able to have your priorities in order and the things that are really important to you, and just got to make time for those things.
So how has golf helped you through this transition? Because you went from competing on the field to now competing in golf, and you're we've golfed. He's an amazing golfer, and there's something unique about that sport that I think is can help us.
Golf is the greatest connector of all, right? You know, if I were to call you and say, hey Ed, I'm in Atlanta, can I spend 4 hours with you at your office? You would be like, No, Larry, I don't have 4 hours to spend. But if we're somewhere playing golf, you know, I get to spend 4 hours with you, talk to you about everything that's going on. You really get to know the person. You get to know their values. You get to see their temperament. You know, I'm gonna see the good shots. I'm gonna see the bad shots. You know, you get to see how you treat your caddy or, you know, people around you. And I mean, you really get a chance to like get a look inside the person, right? And I just love what the game stands for. And I also love that you can never perfect it, right? You can get better at it, but you'll never be the greatest, right? You know, even you hear guys, they shoot 59 and they say, man, if I could have made that putt on 15, or if I could have just hit a little bit better chip on 9, you know, what could I have done, right? And those are guys shooting 59, and it's not like the guys like us who are, you know.
I shot 59, but it was for 9 holes.
I just love it. It's an imperfect game. It's a game of misses.
But you're right. It's a beautiful sport. I love it not for the sport, but for the camaraderie.
Oh, for sure.
And for the fellowship, and a beautiful place to go for a walk for 4 hours with friends and a beautiful locale and challenge yourself.
For sure.
But it's a sport that transcends a lot of what people who are not golfers don't really appreciate or understand about it.
I agree. I agree.
All right, on our next question, Ed, pay attention because I think we may have a job for Larry when we get done with this. Larry, we have a question from a Delta customer who wants to know, first of all, how many countries have you been to, and what is the most memorable trip you've taken, and why?
I've been to 108 countries now, 108 countries, and I would say the most meaningful trip I've ever been on was to Israel. And, you know, I'm a pretty spiritual person, and being able to go and walk in, you know, through the West Bank and kind of go through all of the small streets and see where Jesus Christ carried the cross. I mean, it's like, you know, give you tingles, or, you know, swimming in the Dead Sea, or looking at Mesopotamia. I mean, like all of these historical sites, you know, was amazing. And, you know, my brother and I actually went, you know, together, and it was really cool. That was hands down probably the best trip I've ever had.
Yeah. How old were you when you went?
It was probably 10 years ago.
10 years ago?
Yeah.
I went, same. When I was in Israel, I've been all over the world as well, but that city, you know, walking the streets of Jerusalem and seeing all the different religions of the world that were birthed there. You feel like it's more than just sacred ground. You're in a place that, you know, history calls you to, and I'll never forget that trip. And you know, anyone who hasn't been, you really need, as the world's starting to get back together, you really need to go. I tell everybody that if there's one place to go, save up, spend the time, devote the time, and don't cut it short. You know, I was there for about 10 days, and I could have stayed 10 months.
I went during a really unique time too, because it was during the Arab Springs, and so it was very quiet. And I remember going to Jordan as well. I was at Petra, and literally it was like 10 people were there, and I got a chance to go through the whole property, and it was unique. It was really unique.
And you know, unfortunately, in this country, people have a really poor perception because of media that it's somewhat unsafe or volatile or difficult place. It's not.
No,
it's
not
one
at
of the
all.
safest places I've ever felt I was in.
For sure.
And part of that is because you don't worry about your safety. And by the way, it is plenty safe. But you're so absorbed by the experience you're having, and it is a spiritual journey, and it is something that you come back from. I think it's the only place I've ever been. I know I came back a different person after being there.
Yeah, I think travel, you know, those places that touch you the most are the ones that touch you spiritually. And if there was a second, I would say it was Machu Picchu. You know, something about hiking for 2 days and coming through that sun gate, you know, when the sun coming up, and thinking, how was this created, you know, so long ago with no modern technology and architecture, and I was just blown away. You know, there was something very spiritual about that place as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have a couple more comments that came in after the comment from Donnie that came in. And one question in particular from our external audience commented on you saying that a lot of those players had great influences on you during your experience. So can you talk about how those players or just how folks you looked up to has played an influence on your experience, and then also what you've learned to also pass that on to other folks as you build community in ways that you have?
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. Chris Carter, he's a Hall of Fame wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings, and somebody I always looked up to and admired. He went one step further. I mean, he would allow me to come down in Florida and train with him in the off season, like literally live at his house. And I'm just a little snotty-nosed high school kid, and just let me live with his family. And so every single day we would get up and go run routes and train together, and like that, it was invaluable for me to be able to have that type of experience. And when I got to college and then eventually got to the pros, I started kind of doing the same receiver camp that he would do, trying to emulate that and bring younger players around to kind of pass the knowledge and insight that Chris passed on to me. And I remember one thing he did say to me when I first got in the league. He said, when you leave the National Football League, make sure it's a better place than when you came. And that was something that I always thought about, when I was trying to mentor other guys and help them just make the transition from college to the pros a little bit more seamless.
Yeah, well, you've certainly done that. It's the game's improved, and I think the overall perception of the game continues to get better. It's gone through some rough patches, but it seems like it's in a good way and getting better. What young receiver do you have your eyes on in the league? What are a couple names for those fantasy geeks out there for the next couple of years who to keep their eye on?
I'm a homer, so Christian Kirk is he's a really, really good football player and a really, really good human being, and I just continue to see his trajectory go up and up and up. And Cardinals they've been a little bit been banged up by injuries over the last couple of weeks, so I think people have really got the chance to see him kind of perform as a #1 receiver, with DeAndre and AJ being out for a little bit, and I'm really excited. I'm bullish on his future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the Cardinals are going to do it this year?
I really do hope so.
Yeah.
That would be unbelievable. To see that for the Bidwell family and the Cardinals fans, and all the great friends and relationships I have in the organization. It would be amazing.
You played in the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, I did.
What was your? I know what the outcome was, but what was your? What was the experience like?
I was just blown away by the pageantry of it. You're sitting on the field, and you see all these military dignitaries on the field, all these stars, on the shoulders, and you're just like, this is what it's all about. And it's the only game where people show up like 3 hours early just to take pictures of the field. Mm-hmm. I mean, the stadium is full, 2 hours before the game. Yeah. I mean, because people are just there and they're so excited about it. The half times are really long. Yeah. You kind of lose a little bit of the momentum when you go into halftime. And when we played, James Harrison scored like a long touchdown. So the last thing you wanted to do is go sit in the locker room for 30 minutes. You wanted to kind of rectify that and get back at it. But it's great. It's just wonderful to see just the magnitude of the game. To hear the halftime performance and know that there's millions and millions of people tuned in to watch one football game. Yeah. It's nothing like it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an incredible, insightful conversation, and we have time for one more question, which we ask all of our guests, and then we'll turn it over to Ed. So our mantra as an organization is that no one better connects the world than Delta, and so we want to hear from you. What do you think are ways that we can better connect the world?
Delta is the premier carrier in the world, in my opinion, already. Superior customer service, more routes available than any other carrier. I mean, you guys are already at the very top of the food chain as it is. But if I were splitting hairs, I would say in Phoenix, we could speed up the baggage claims a little bit. That's about
we can work on that.
But that's splitting hairs. That's splitting hairs.
Yeah. Well, Larry, thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a great hour.
I've enjoyed it.
Appreciate you, my friend, and
well.
Welcome to the family.
Thank you.
As everyone gets a chance to get to know you a little bit better, the person, not just the guy with the helmet on, and the incredible athlete that you are. People can see your heart. They can see into your soul. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that you gave great inspiration to. And we're going to continue to work together and do great things here at Delta. And our successes will be your successes likewise. And I think there's so much that we are coming out of this time. And there's just so many opportunities, to go grab and to go do. And I just hope everyone out there, just continues to ensure that they're looking after each other. They're remembering, the lessons of COVID, remembering those vulnerabilities, kind of reaching out and helping people in need, particularly this holiday season coming up, and knowing there's a lot of hurting people still. People that have been really hurt and lost loved ones, and there's a lot in the community. So I know we'll be doing that here at Delta. We always try, but I know this holiday season will be that much more important to us. And I'm just thrilled to know that you're on the journey, and you're a good man and a good friend.
Well, I appreciate it, and I feel the same way about you, Ed.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Take care. And thank you all. And for everyone, I hope everyone has a great holiday season coming up. Happy Thanksgiving, and celebrate the holidays and look out for each other.
We want to thank all of our employees, customers, and communities for joining us for our 5th episode of Gaining Altitude, and we hope to see you at our next one. In the meantime, you can catch Ed's first 2 episodes of Gaining Altitude with Tristan Walker and Danny Meyer on board your next flight in the series section of Delta Studio. And as always, please share your feedback and get the latest updates by connecting with us on delta.com/gainingaltitude. Until next time, I'm wishing you all blue skies. Please take care and stay safe.